me over. Oh, that went to Tara's email. Oh, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, I couldn't get onto the school site.
Danielle, when we start, make sure you hit the record button because we're going to need to email this out to families.
Okay, we're ready to go.
Okay,
All right.
Kathleen.
That was exciting. All right. All right, Superintendent Smith, could you please give us a brief overview where we're going with this meeting if we can get started?
Yes, Danielle's going to give me permission to share screen. Let me start by saying good evening to everyone, and I certainly apologize for the technical difficulties that we've had. We do have a license for 1,000 participants. Somehow there was a snafu and things got botched up. We're going to record this. There is a call going out to families as we're speaking, letting them know that we had technical difficulties and that we're going to email out the link to the recording. So we'll need to do that when this is over. Sharing my screen, I'm going to start with showing everyone a document that's going to be placed on the district's website once the Board of Education members approve the reopening plan. But this is the full document, and this document is has a lot of narrative to it. But what's important about this document is that it has regulations, the guidance or the requirements from the Department of Education, and then it has the district response. And it's 38 pages long. And so what we did tonight was that we converted it into a PowerPoint presentation. However, I wanted you to be able to see the entire document. I know the members of the Board of Education just got it yesterday. This is the document that needs to be submitted to the state on Friday. So I'm going to share my screen again, and now I'm going to start with the PowerPoint presentation, if I can find it.
We do have citizens' comments listed. Do you want to defer those to the, I'd rather, and I know we're all going to have a lot of questions. But I'd really like to defer those to the end so we can listen to the PowerPoint and then have our questions. I think it would be beneficial to listen to what these committees and the subcommittees have put together before we ask our questions. You may have a lot of your questions would be answered through this presentation.
Okay, I am looking for the PowerPoint.
Okay.
Okay, Danielle, now I am having technical difficulties, which I should not be having. Here it is. Hold on. Okey-doke. I am going to minimize this. I need to share my screen. Here we go. And I am going to start from the beginning. So, Thompson Public School reentry plan. We're going to talk about how the plan was actually developed. You all know that we closed school on March 13th, and we never did reopen for the end of the school year. Right around April, a core team of administrators and directors started to meet because we were under the impression at that time that school would be reopening for the FY20 school year. So we started to meet, started to put plans in place like securing PPE equipment, starting to make safety plans for when students returned. However, as the year went on, we realized that school was not going to reopen. We kept that team together. We met continuously, bi-weekly, and then the team was expanded in June to add additional stakeholders because it was a small core team of people that had been working on this and trying to figure out how we were going to reopen school. So then we added all of the administrators. We added teachers, parents, And so we had an expanded group of people that were working on reentry or reopening school. On June 29th, the Department of Education released Adapt, Advance, Achieve, Connecticut's Plan to Learn and Grow. That plan is our directive. Every superintendent, every school district has been directed to submit a reopening plan on July 24th, which is this Friday. So the committee and I have been working, and there have been subcommittee groups, and we have been working on this plan and put that document together. You can see all the members of our reentry committee here. It is a vast list. I thank these people from the bottom of my heart. They have been gracious with their time and their expertise to put together a plan that I feel confident we can submit to the state on Friday. So in the plan, there are two areas that we have to focus on. There are areas that are requirements, and those requirements are from the Office of the Governor, a CSDE, and the Connecticut State Department of Health. Those requirements in that document that CSDE sent us are mandatory. And then in that same document, there are areas that are called guidance. And while those guidance are not mandatory, they're suggested, and in some cases, highly encouraged. So when you go through the original document and compare it to the district plan, there are places where we took that guidance and then verbatim, and then there were other places that we had to make it fit for Thompson Public Schools. So one of the things that's most controversial, but is a requirement, is mask wearing. All faculty, staff, and students are required to wear face masks that cover the mouth and nose. And I want to put that out there right up front. It is non-negotiable. We have to follow that protocol. So when students get on the bus, they need to wear a mask. When students enter school, they need to wear a mask. Now we're trying to find out some specific guidance around those individuals who cannot, for medical reasons or for other disabilities, cannot tolerate wearing a mask, and what types of accommodations we can make for those folks. But the reason I call out mask right up front is because that's one of the most controversial requirements in the plan. And I just want you to all understand that that is definitely something that I am being directed to make sure that everyone participates in. So, but there are other requirements in the plan that we'll address as we go along. So the next thing that we were directed to do, which is a requirement, is to come up with 3 learning plans for our students. One, that's a full school model, which means all of our students in preschool through grade 12 will attend school full-time on site. Secondly, we need to come up with a hybrid model, which is a little bit of at-home learning, distant learning, and a little bit of on-site learning. And so our hybrid model splits the classes in half, where 2 days a week students are on-site distant learning with their teachers and their classmates, and the other 3 days they are at-home distant learning. And then the third model is that all students pre-K to 12 would attend school online, just like we did after we closed on March 13th. So the definitions of what a full-time learning program is that obviously students will attend school full-time in person per the Board of Ed approved calendar. And what you noticed on the agenda tonight is that we are going to revise the calendar because new information came from the state that we can reduce the school year down to 177 days and give teachers additional professional development time so that they can develop their distant learning plans and also plan for on-site instruction. Our distant learning plan would mean that all of our students would learn remotely from home, and students that are enrolled in Thompson Public Schools may return to a full-time on-site learning program, but families would need to give us at least a 1-week notice so that we could arrange transportation if necessary and also inform the teacher so she can prepare the class for other students coming in. We know that when school initially starts, if we're able to come in full-time on-site, that there may be families that hold back their children to see how the program is going to be run, and then maybe later on have their children come to school. So when we are talking about creating cohorts, which I'll get into next, I assumed that everyone was coming back to school on site. And then actually tomorrow or the day after, Danielle will be mailing out to every family a form that is going to ask each family, will your child come to school full-time on site? Will you like your child to distant learn? Or the third option is, are you going to homeschool your child, which means you're going to withdraw your child from Thompson Public Schools and you're going to provide that curriculum yourself. In the full-time learning program and the distant learning program, the district is responsible to provide the curriculum and instruction. And then the hybrid model, because we have to reduce the capacity of students entering the building by 50% and then also riding the buses, the schedule would be that we would split the school in half to an A group and a B group. So the A group would come in Mondays and Tuesdays, come to school. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, they would learn from home. They would distant learn. The B group would come in on Thursday, Friday, and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, they would distant learn from home. On Wednesday, all the students, faculty, and staff will be home, and the school will undergo a very deep cleaning by our custodial staff so that the second cohort of students can come on in on Thursday morning. So what I'm asking the parents that are on this call and those that are listening to this recording is that expect something in your mail at least by the beginning of next week. Please take the opportunity to either email that back to my office or mail it in. We're giving you a self-addressed stamped envelope to mail that back. So we have a sense of what your preference is going to be for at least the beginning of this school year. You will always have the option to change your mind. So, accommodations for students for special education. Students who currently receive special education services are entitled to appropriate accommodations for any of these learning plans that we put forward. The one thing is, if the district shifts to a hybrid model, we have some students who require intensive services, and they are our students that are in our self-contained programs and also in our Bradley-Windham County program. Those students may attend school on site for 4 days if it's appropriate for them, and that is because of the severity of their disability and the significant regression that those students will face if they don't remain on site and get as much instruction as they can. Talking about technology. So just to let you know that I am pleased to announce that coming this year, Thompson Public Schools will be a one-to-one district. That means every student in the district will have a laptop or a Chromebook. Last year, when we sent out the parent survey, there were 3 things. Parents had very many positive comments about the distant learning program and the teachers who taught them. However, some of the criticism, and it wasn't really criticism, it was good feedback. One of them was that they had a hard time sharing laptops and computers if they had 2 or 3 children at home, and you could imagine that I'm certain was challenging. They were also challenged by the fact that many teachers were using a lot of different home-based platforms. So the district is going to shift over to a Google platform. Everyone will log on to the same platform, and then it will take you to the programs that the teachers have loaded into that platform. And then finally, the third thing was that parents wanted to see more live instruction. So the district did put together, let's hope it worked better than tonight. The district did put together individual Zoom accounts for teachers so that they can record and have their own accounts. What's happened up till now is the people that own Zoom has offered that service to teachers and educators for free, but that's soon to expire. And so we are in a position that we need to make sure, because that platform is so user-friendly for our teachers and our families, that we are going to make sure every teacher has their own account. So when we look over to the technology side, every pre-KK and grade 1 student is going to get a Chromebook, but the Chromebooks are going to be outfitted with a touch screen, and that's important for our younger users. The teachers felt that they wanted them to have the same Chromebook that everybody has so that they could get used to what that looks like. However, they wanted them to have that feature. We were fortunate enough to amend our Alliance grant, and the purchase of those Chromebooks were grant funded. And then our students in grades 2, 3, 4, and 5 will get repurposed Chromebooks from the high school, because the high school was fortunate to get, because again, we are an Alliance district, brand new laptops for every student at Turtle Up Memorial High School. Teachers are going to participate in professional development to improve the distant learning program. They did some work in June when school let out. Many teachers got together and they aligned the curriculum. They focused on specific learning targets and specific standards that they want to make sure that every student at every grade level or in every content area masters. And so that work has already been done. But in August, when our teachers are back together, we are going to primarily work and focus on our distant learning. Putting this plan together has taken all of our brain space, and we've been focusing on the plan, but we need to shift our focus now and really enhance our distant learning program, because there is going to be an inevitable time that we're either distant learning or we have a hybrid approach, and that will all depend on how the virus itself is responding in our community. So we first have to set up classrooms to social distance. And I want you to take a look at the elementary classroom setup. We put up Bill Birch and his team put together a model classroom. Those desks are 16 feet apart. What's missing in that classroom is all of the things that make a classroom homey, like the little book corners and the other rug spaces. All of that has to be removed from the classroom so that we can maximize the social distance space of 6 feet. To do that and make sure that everyone comes back to school, we needed to create cohort groups. And so what we did was, I primarily did, was take a look at the staffing and the current enrollment and take teachers and shift them from, especially reading and special ed teachers, split a class in half, and then put one of those alternate teachers, and they'll pair together and work together. So a special educator in one side of the cohort and a general education teacher on the other side of the cohort, who are in 2 separate classrooms, will share students, because at some point midday, they will switch classrooms so that the students will interact with the gen ed teacher and the regular ed teacher, and we're doing the same thing with our Title I staff. In some cases, some classrooms are being moved to larger spaces where I can just keep one teacher. So for example, we'll see in grade 3 and grade 4, some of those classrooms are being moved to our music room, which is large at Mary Fisher, the community room, our computer labs, our cafeterias, and we're spreading students out that way. And that way we can create the appropriate cohort groups and keep them at around 14 students or less, or 20 students or less if they're in a larger space. We're able to do a similar thing at the middle school using some alternate staff. Oh, and just to go back to the previous slide, the impact though, there is some staffing impact. And so we will have to take a half-time teacher who's currently working for us and increase her to full-time. And we will need 2 permanent substitutes, because we will need to increase our unified art periods, because we will have more classrooms. And the same thing will happen at the middle school. And that is a sample of a middle school classroom. The high school classrooms will look just about the same. And in that scenario, the staffing impact is 1 permanent sub would be needed for extra periods of unified arts. And then the high school. So at the high school, it is difficult and virtually impossible due to student schedules to create cohorts. Classrooms are going to be removed of non-essential furniture to allow for the social distancing between students and teacher and students. The teachers will change classes whenever it's feasible, and the guidance counselor and Principal Perrette will be working on that. The class rotation schedule is going to need to be developed so that it limits the number of students passing in the corridors so that we don't have large crowds in the corridors. Luckily, we have a small high school, so it's easier to do at Turtle Lot. We do have about 8 classes, and I did a class size analysis, and there's about 8 classes that have 20 to 21 students. Those students' classes will be scheduled in larger spaces like the auditorium, the stage area, the library, and we have a very large lab that we can use. So we're going to make accommodations for those larger numbers. Many of the classrooms, though, will be able to have the appropriate social distancing. The guidance says 6 feet when feasible, and in other places it says that you can reduce that span to 3 feet. Right now, we're still working with the 6 feet model, and we're hoping that all of our high school classes will be in spaces that we're able to spread students out. What we didn't use is our gymnasiums, primarily because they echo so much, but we also needed a place for students to have gymnastics, gym, if they're physical education, if they're not able to go outside. And we do plan on using outside a lot. We plan on using outside for mask breaks. We want children to have recess. And we also want the opportunity that if a teacher wants to take their class outside, they'll be able to do so. We hope to put a few tents outside so that classes can congregate under there. And we're sprucing up some areas like the courtyard at the high school to accommodate an outside learning space. And then transportation. So the guidance talks about low transmission risk and moderate transmission risks for students who are going to ride on the school bus. Students and their families in both scenarios must check their children at home to see if they have any of the COVID symptoms. We'll be sending home with that form that we're asking you to identify your learning programs. There is a transportation checklist before leaving for the bus stop. It shows a list of COVID symptoms, and all students and all bus drivers are required to wear a face mask prior to boarding the bus. In a low transmission risk, which is what we hope for a full on-site opening of school, the school buses will operate at or near capacity. The school buses will be disinfected between tiers, so the secondary tier comes in first. It will take about 10 minutes to disinfect, 10 to 15 minutes to disinfect each bus before the next tier starts. We will have to adjust the start and end times of some of our schools to accommodate that. We are hoping to have our safety officers assist our drivers the first couple of weeks of school to really help establish a routine and to help with seating assignments if that becomes necessary. On a moderate transmission risk, well, that would be when we come in on a hybrid program, and that's where only 50% of our students will be coming to school, and then the bus capacity obviously will be reduced, hopefully up to 50%, and we'll have a lot less students riding on the buses. That's all going to be dependent upon what program we're in. Food service. Breakfast and lunch will be delivered and served in the classrooms. We have good news that we piloted last year Mary R. Fisher students to receive free lunch. All students in Thompson Public Schools receive free breakfast. This year, parents at the elementary only will not need to fill out the free and reduced lunch form because we have already been approved for free meals for all of Mary R. Fisher. And that has a lot to do with our poverty rate and our direct certification for families who receive food assistance. Breakfast and lunch will be served in our classrooms. If your child is distant learning at home, parents may pick up breakfast and lunch at the middle school front door. We'll have someone waiting for you. We'll give you the times for that. And then if we do shift to a hybrid model, we are going to have to figure out meal site pickups like we did when school closed. And if we're on a full distant learning program, we'll revert back to those 4 meal sites that we were using, which was the library, Teague, Quinnebog Fire Station, and East Thompson Fire Station. So operations. All of our schools right now have been completely disinfected. And actually, right after we closed, Bill Birch and his team, and thank goodness for those custodians, they disinfected all of our spaces. Now they're doing the heavy cleaning that they typically would do in the summer, but everything is completely disinfected. Our PPE equipment, our masks, our face shields, our gowns, gloves, thermometers, and desk shields have been ordered, and most of that equipment is on site and it's been delivered. And I thank Shannon and Bill Birch, Shannon Grauer, our lead nurse, and Bill Birch, who had the foresight back in April to tell us, you know what, we need to stop ordering this stuff and creating an inventory, which we did do. So I think we're in good shape for that. If there is an exception for a student that can't wear a mask, we have some backup accommodations if that is appropriate, and that's what we're going to be directed to do, that we do have the opportunity for face shields and maybe some desk shields for those students. Right now, we're waiting for additional guidance on what happens if a student can't wear a mask. We're supposed to be getting some of that information from our local health officials and also the Department of Ed and our own attorney. Plexiglass is going to be installed in all of our school offices, and that's really to keep our school secretaries safe. And I must say at this point, visitors will not be allowed into the schools. So, you know, Mary Fisher parents who are very used to on the first day of school coming in and bringing their children to the classroom, none of that can be allowed. Parents will be able to enter the school but remain at the front foyer. Most of our parent meetings and conferences and IEPs and PPT meetings will still continue through Zoom. Faculty meetings and even my meetings with my admin staff will continue to be through Zoom until the restrictions ease up. We are putting a lot of signs are being printed and being installed throughout the campus. Wash your hands, stay socially distant, what are the COVID symptoms? All of that will be very well displayed in the school. We've ordered dividers to convert our larger spaces like our 2 cafeterias into classrooms. Bill Birch and his team are working on cleaning and servicing the HVAC system. That's our ventilation system, which is most important because we want to have that running at high capacity. The water systems are being flushed. Our bubblers will be closed. Food service is prepared to provide bottled water for students throughout the day. Obviously, students can bring their own bottled water if they want to keep it on their desk. Standard cleaning procedures. We're going to be following CDC guidelines around cleaning protocols. Obviously, there will be routine cleaning of the bathrooms, routine cleaning of the outside equipment, especially the playscapes. We'll have to have heavy duty cleaning between the AM and the PM preschool sessions. That will require some additional substitute coverage. We are transferring an evening custodian to daytime. We typically only have 2 full-time custodians during the day. We want to make sure that each school has their own, and we do need a couple of additional substitute custodians to help with the cleaning, especially around the play equipment and any kind of, if students are in the gym and we need to wipe things down, and then just to keep up with the general continuous cleaning of the bathrooms. We are, like I said before, ordering tents for outside mask breaks, and we are fixing that courtyard up at the high school because right now at the end of school, it wasn't appropriate for students to be able to use that space for outside activities. And then health monitoring. We go back to all faculty staff are required to wear face masks that cover the mouth and nose. We talked about those special exemptions. We talked about being assessed at home. We all should assess ourselves as far as faculty and staff, and then parents doing the same with their children. We're going to wash hands a lot. There's going to be frequent trips to the bathrooms. Some Classrooms will be on a specific schedule, like they will be for mask breaks, so that we can make sure children are washing their hands frequently. We do have to set up an isolation room for ill students, faculty, and staff. That room will be in the middle school. It is a room that's closest, it has its own exit door nearby. We've just installed a full bathroom in that space. The plumbing happened to already be there, so it was easy to convert that space to an isolation room. Nurses, when the weather is nice, will escort children out the door and around the building and come in from the outside to that middle school space. It will be supervised by a certified CNA. Until a parent can pick up a child, or a teacher or faculty or staff is waiting for a ride, or they will exit through that way. That is most important. Having a space that we can, if someone is ill, we can place them and remove them from the rest of the population. Like I said earlier, the signs will be posted throughout the complex with ongoing announcements, and we're going to ask our principals to make sure that every morning announcement and midday announcement, there's reminders about those protocols. And then during that week of August 24th, the faculty and staff are going to, they always receive every year, you know, training around bloodborne pathogens and how to use an EpiPen, and how many people that require CPR training. We usually upgrade a lot of that. In addition to all of that, there will be more training around health protocols in relation to COVID, social distancing, proper hygiene. And then we are working closely with the Northeast District Department of Health. And the Northeast District Department of Health has issued some definitions for us that we as a school district need to abide by, talking about what is a case. A person who has a COVID case is someone who's tested positive. If there's a suspected case, then you can see what that definition is. A contact is a person who's in close contact with a case up to 2 days before the onset of symptoms. And then a close contact would be somebody who is 6 feet of an infected person for 15 minutes without a mask or any kind of barrier. And so if we have an issue either in the classroom or even in the community, and we have a threat of a COVID risk, Shannon will first of all contact the Northeast District Department of Health with myself, and we will tell them of the situation that's happening. They will then issue guidance for us to follow. So for example, perhaps only one classroom needs to be, or one cohort needs to be quarantined for 14 days and the whole school doesn't need to be shut down. It depends on the situation at the time and the guidance that we get from NDDH as to what will be, how we will respond. The one thing that we have been asked to do is put a communication plan together. I can say that I feel good about the process that I've been using. I text, I call, I email, I put on social media. Parents will know if there is an issue happening in school. I will be upfront and certainly very transparent if we have any issues around illness, and you will be the first to know if we need to quarantine a class or a group. Certainly we won't identify the person who's sick, but we will identify the class. There is a process, and this is a draft process for us to use internally with NDDH, but you can see that they have already started to develop a certain protocol that we're going to have to follow at the district level. And then communication plan, as I talked about, you know, we're going to use our calls, our text, our email, our newsletter, our website, social media posts, student handbooks, and Tiger Talk when we need to. And thank you, Rachel Johnston, who always sponsors Tiger Talk for the district. When school closed in March, she let me every week use Tiger Talk to get information out to the community. Tonight was the first presentation of the overall district plan for reentry, for reopening. I am planning on holding, and hopefully the Zoom will work much better, forums for each individual's level, because I know each level parents have their own concerns. And then I also want to meet with the student leadership team because I know our students at the high school level do have some questions around reopening and how it's going to impact their high school reentry. And then finally, we do have a reentry email that after the end of this presentation, and then anytime, if you have a question, you can email us, and Danielle, my executive assistant, and I will be monitoring that website, that email site, and we'll get back to you with some answers. What we're hoping from tonight's presentation is that we're going to take those questions and we're going to answer those questions in a written format after this meeting, and then post frequently asked questions on our website, because other parents might be asking you, asking us the same questions. So I am going to stop share my screen, and I am going to be quiet now and open it up to the board members who may have questions, and then we'll be monitoring the chat room so that we can answer questions that people are posting. Kathleen?
All right, first, I need a motion to approve. I'm going to skip over the calendar. I'm going to go directly to approve the reopening plan and submit it to the Connecticut, what is CSDE, Connecticut Schools.
State Department of Education.
Let's do it that way. Basically what this PowerPoint presentation was a synopsis of the long presentation, or the reopening plan that you are giving to the state on Friday, which we need to approve, reminding us all that it is a draft, sub to change per any change by the education commissioner, by the governor. All it really does is give the state our plan for the 3 scenarios that have been laid out. This is what we would do if we were to open fully. This is what we would do under the hybrid scenario, and this is what we would do under the distance learning scenario. Correct, Melinda?
That's correct. And both of those documents at the end of the day, after the presentation, we'll put under the coronavirus section for people to access.
Okay. So I'm looking for a motion to approve a draft, submitting the draft reentry plan to the State Department of Education Friday. Can I have that motion, please?
So moved. This is Linda.
Okay,
I'll
second?
second, Jody.
Okay. Now we can open it up for discussion and questions.
So, first, I mean, we're going to approve this plan pretty much, like Kathleen, like you just said. This is about as fluid of a process as it's going to be. My guess is, since this was completed and sent to us, there's probably already been a couple things that, you know, may change, locations and things like that. So, you know, realistically, I'm not even sure, is this part of the state's mandate that the boards of education actually approve the reentry plan? Because I would assume you have the right to change it pretty much daily.
So it really depends upon the board. Some boards have made the approval, and others have been reviewed it, and they didn't feel it was necessary. Kathleen really wanted our board to, you know, at least approve and this plan so that I can submit it to the state.
So then my question to that would be, if we do formally approve it, do we have to formally approve changes? You see where I'm getting at in that regard?
I do.
So
I do. So
Well,
have you talked to the attorney about that?
The attorney is the one who told me to put draft on the document because when we submit it to the Department of Ed, it's subject to change. And so he felt that putting the word draft is important to put on there.
I think we can approve it subject to necessary changes. And when it finally gets to be August 31st, we'll know where we are, Sean.
Yeah.
And-
So, right, so we're just approving the draft, essentially.
Right.
Okay.
Yes, that, you finished, Sean? I'm sorry.
Yep.
Okay,
For
Val.
now.
Val.
I'm kind of along the same lines as Sean because I'm hearing a lot from other school districts as well, and I know this is a draft, but is it a two-way street where, say the state keeps changing stuff, do we have to come and approve everything after this draft that the state changes do, and vice versa? Everything that we do tonight is just a draft not written in stone, because I've got a lot of concerns about a lot of different things relative to even what's in there. So that's, I'm like Sean, are we tied to this, or just we vote to say to submit the draft and that's it?
I think that's what we're voting on. Yes, let's submit this is fine as a draft. We submit this to the state and then we see what the state does with it, you know? Yes, Tom.
So I guess I'm a little confused because first, I mean, I applaud everybody for the hard work that they did on putting this whole draft together. My question is, though, is that there's 3 scenarios. So by us approving the draft, have we chosen a scenario that we are going to follow, or when will that be decided? Because, go ahead.
So the governor's deciding that for us. And the commissioner, they're saying right now, as of today, July 22nd, that all students preschool through grade 12 will be coming to school on site full time. Dependent upon whatever happens in Connecticut, I know we're the only state in the union that has things contained, but depending upon what happens in Connecticut with COVID, he might come out and change that plan and say, okay, all the elementary kids are coming in, but the high school and middle school students are staying home. They're asking us to be prepared for those 3 scenarios, whether we're all in, whether we're half in, or whether we're all at home. He wants us to be prepared for whatever he decides after July 24th when we submit
Okay.
the plan.
All right, so the second part of this, and it's rhetorical, I'm not looking for an answer. I guess there's obviously costs associated with all 3. And the first and foremost thing is the safety of our staff, our children, and to ensure that we provide a professional learning experience. We're already having trouble funding a standard operation. So if the governor is going to decide that you or we have to do this, is the governor going to pay for this? And will the governor assume all liability that comes along with anything that happens? And again, I'm not looking for an answer. I'm just, it's nice that the government's going to mandate something, but if they're not going to fund it, how are we supposed to do this on our limited budget that's already been stripped apart to try to provide safety for our children and staff? You don't have to answer. I'm just putting it out.
Tom, can I introduce you to Connecticut politics?
It's not just Connecticut, though.
No, it's
Oh, but
everywhere.
we're in Connecticut, so.
I know.
So,
I have a question.
Yeah.
Oh,
All right, I'm done. Go ahead. Thank you.
Who was next?
I know I raised my hand.
Okay.
It is to the how fluid this program is. You could be in full classroom type of learning, and if you have a positive COVID test within that cohort, you're going right to distance learning for 14 days anyhow. So we have to be that dynamic and be able to move that quickly. And that's one thing the school did. I heard positive things where I work from some parents of Thompson School kids. With this plan, have we identified how much money the PPE, I know you already have it, but it's not gonna, last forever. And you have your cleaning supplies, you have your wipes, whatever you're using as single use, disposable. How many, my place, it's all, hundreds of thousands of dollars we've spent since March. And do we know if we're gonna have a sufficient number of teachers? Because I'm assuming masks are controversial with the adults as well. And there are some for medical reasons, or they just don't want to wear a mask, but don't want to come back. And that's their decision. But then we have to get other people in.
So that I think is one of our challenges. I was able to figure out cohorts based on the staff that we currently have and adding a minimum of 3.5 people, just with the scenario that everybody's on site. We do know that there are some teachers who have already expressed that they, for whatever their reasons are, cannot return. I will be meeting with them individually with Louise Morrison. She's the union president, next week, to see what types of accommodations can be made. The one thing that the community needs to be aware of is that if people have accrued sick time and they have a valid reason for not coming to work, then the district must compensate them for their time off. And then the district also must provide a substitute teacher and pay for that salary. So when you think about that, you're going to be paying almost double salary, certainly not with all the benefits, but double salary for some folks so we can get substitutes in. We had to send in last Friday a survey. We had to fill out a survey about how many teachers do we think aren't coming back. And we didn't have a firm number, so you more or less had to guesstimate it. But when we put everything together and considered the teachers that we currently knew that weren't coming back, that grand total price for all the PPEs, the extra staffing, the extra equipment that we have to buy came to $776,000. And that's a staggering number. We just reduced the budget by 1.1 million by eliminating staff and a lot of other things. Where that money's coming from, I don't know. I know that we're going to get at least $100,000 from CARES money, maybe a little bit more. We have to give some of our CARES money to the non-publics, which is Marianapolis and Susan Wayne. So I don't know what percentage of that 132 that we are supposed to get. We haven't seen a penny of it yet, by the way. And then we're really going to have to look hard. If we don't have that many children who come on site to learn, can I take some of those classrooms and not have as many cohorts? Say I don't need 6 cohorts in grade 3, I only need 5. Well, maybe that extra person can fill in one of those positions that we need to cover. But at this moment in time, until I get that data back from the parents, I won't be able to give you a real number, but the number that we put in to the state was as accurate as I had at that time with the information I had at that time. But that's a staggering number.
So afraid to come to work or not wanting to wear the mask is different than being in the high risk category.
Correct.
Right. One is more like a sick FMLA, where I would think the sick time would come into play. The other one, if they're afraid to come to work, I would think they would be using their vacation until it gets to unpaid or you just separate.
Well, teachers don't get vacation. And honestly, then I'll be working closely with our legal team because, what is a reasonable accommodation? Certainly we want to make sure that we're distant learning. Our students, we're hoping to live stream from classrooms, and we need to buy that equipment to make that happen. We could use some of those teachers who might have medical issues. We might be able to use them to do some of our distant learning.
Yep.
So we're hoping that we tap into their expertise for that. But until I have a solid idea of what our families are feeling and thinking, it's a little premature yet to put a final number, but that guesstimated number was, at the time, was fairly accurate.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Val is next, then Donna.
Why don't you let Donna go, because I've had a chance at a question. I've got a lot of questions, but let Donna go next.
Donna, then Danielle, can you unmute Danielle's phone? Okay, thank you. Donna, you're next then.
Thank you. So I have a question that's almost like what Tom was asking about how, how are we keeping track of this money that we're spending on PPE, and what are the added extra costs of that? Is Bob keeping a separate spreadsheet? Are we going to have separate code items specifically for COVID-19 and for the closure of schools, everything like that? The cost of how many subs are we going to have, custodial staff, kitchen people, everything, how is that going to be handled?
We got pretty good at that because we had to track it for FY20. But we have right now, we're keeping track of that. We have to submit for all the CARES money first. And the application, I think, is coming out tomorrow so that we can start to apply for that money. And then after that, we can actually work with the town and apply for some FEMA money for some PPE equipment and the thermometers and those things that we bought. So we will be able to ask for reimbursement, but what they've told us is you have to spend that CARES money up front first. So Bob has been tracking everything. He's even on the side been tracking the additional legal service time that we've, obviously I'm calling the lawyer more because it's more complicated around human resource issues and personnel. So he is tracking every little thing, and hopefully if there's money down the pike, we'll be in a good place to put in for the reimbursement. But the one thing I know for certain is that we have to, whatever that figure is for CARES money, we have to spend and submit for reimbursement from that first. Then we can go to the other pots of money that we might be able to get for reimbursement. And if there's more money that comes down on the federal side of things, hopefully we'll be able to get reimbursement for that. But at this moment in time, every district had to submit a number, and I can't even imagine that the state would be able to cover any of that, or probably a very small portion.
I just have one more follow-up to that, and I can't see if Amy or any of our other Board of Finance members are on this meeting. I'm not saying it to be, but are we keeping them in touch with how this is maybe affecting our budget? Will we be giving them a monthly report, or when things happen? I mean, I know we don't have to, or if we do have to, how does that happen?
Well, that the Board of Finance canceled the July meeting, but that at every Board of Finance meeting, the chair gives me an opportunity to give a Board Ed update. And so at the August meeting, I plan on going over this reentry plan with the Board of Finance to let them know what exactly it is going to cost us to reopen school full time. Honestly, it's less expensive if we bring only half of the children in, but that's not the directive we have right now. It would be a lot easier for us to ease into it and also have appropriate staff with more of a hybrid model. But I understand on the other side the impact with childcare and not having children in a regular routine. There's no easy answer for that, but the community needs to know that this is going to cost the district money. And honestly, we put together a plan that right now the Board of Ed couldn't fund. So that's problematic, but there's no other way to do it. I'm going to turn the light on in my room. Better.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes, Val.
Melinda, several of the things that I've been reading are that a lot of the superintendents are not aligned with what the state wants. The Connecticut Education Association is not aligned with what the state wants. And then my personal concern is if we go with this hybrid system, when we were mandated under the state to be at home. It was okay for our working class families. How are these families that are going to have split education during the week going to accommodate their jobs and taking care of making sure that these kids are schooled? That's one big concern of mine. When you were in these meetings with your other superintendents, I'm sure there's a lot of that discussion. Can you talk a little bit about what they're thinking in relation to the state, what the state is thinking?
Well, I can't speak for another superintendent. So when you look at the plan, and it doesn't matter what learning scenario it is, each learning scenario has complexities that we have to work through. We did it almost triage last March when we had to quickly flip to distant learning, and bless all of our teachers and paras who came along, and principals who came along for the ride, and we were able to do that quickly. We don't want to have to be in a triage situation if we have to shift to distant learning or to a hybrid plan or from an on-site plan. That's got to be really seamless so that there's not a lot of bumps in the road. But I agree with you, Valentine, that if we go to a split schedule, a hybrid schedule, it is going to have an impact on working families. We are working with Leslie, the recreation director, and giving her space on site so that she can continue childcare for before and after school. And I think she's ready to make some accommodations for childcare. But overall, I mean, that's if a family can afford it. And I don't know what the long-term impact is going to be for our working families in this kind of model. I mean, I've always been a working parent, and I would have had to scramble who would take care of my children if they were home 3 days a week. So it is going to be a challenge for the community overall. And we're not the only ones that are going to have that challenge, but it's a real issue for those families that have to put food on their table.
I would also like to see you go back on WINY and talk about these plans, the scenarios, because I think when your voice is heard, I know a lot of people talk about that. A lot of our community does not understand what's going to go down relative to how we have to educate our kids, especially anyone that's not involved. And if the Board of Finance are canceling, meetings and stuff, they're not going to know the nitty gritty. I'm glad that you do that every finance meeting, but I also think we need to tap into others within the community to have them understand there's not a foolproof system on anything. We don't know what's going to come down with the disease itself, the virus itself. We could be thrown into another tailspin, and we're going to have to adjust. And I think if you heard anything today with a couple of the other school districts talking about it, that's the big fear, is you can go down this straight path of what you want to go, but what's going to impact it? Now you're doing this survey with the families. What do you expect to get from that survey, and what will you do with the results that you get? If the state already has a path that they want us to go on, are those surveys going to matter?
Well, it's not really a survey. It's more or less what I need to know is, are parents going to allow their children to come on site or not, depending on what scenario it is. If it's hybrid and they want to distant learn, well, their child's going to continue to distant learn. We have to get ready for that. We have to make sure everybody has a device at home, make sure they have a hotspot, make sure they have curriculum materials. I know I talked to Lucy Trudeau, who's our science, she leads our science, she's our curriculum director for science. She wants to make sure that students take home materials for science. We want to make sure they take home pieces of literature that they're going to be able to have at home, so that if we switch to distant learning, they have all the materials at home. So up front in August, there is going to be a lot of front loading to students and families with materials so that they can keep those things at home, so we can be ready at a moment's notice to switch to distant learning. And that's what, we've got a lot to prepare just for that. There's no easy answer for this, but I can tell you that it might not be that the whole school gets quarantined. It might be a classroom. It might be a wing. It's going to depend upon whatever the risk, the health threat is as to how we respond to it in relation to the guidance we get from our local health officials. But I think it's going to be up and down until the virus settles down and maybe gets eradicated from our area, or with the grace of God, we have a vaccine. But the unknown is, it's hard to plan for that because, you know, every teacher that I see here and every administrator that I see here, we're planners. That's how we live. And so this we can't plan for. We're doing the best we can with these programs and scenarios, but I know that there will be times when we're going to have to scramble and let our families know because we had to make a moment's decision based on what's happening. I don't think it's going to be easy for the next 6 months.
Have we given thought at all to, for any of this, either after school or these groups that may end up getting quarantined if we had a class, on using St. Joe's at all for any of that side stuff that maybe we don't want to bring back up at the school? I mean, as an off-site thing, the school is there, it's empty now. Have you considered anything with that?
We had considered with that, but we know that we have enough space to create our cohorts right on site. We don't have money for rent. We don't have money for the extra staff that we would have to send down to St. Joe's. And so we made a decision, although that was an option, and I think it's Father David, right, reached out to us and did offer that space to us. But at this moment in time, I don't believe we need it. We'll have to wait and see how things pan out, but we still have some open spaces, some areas that we could use for additional classrooms if we had to, especially at Mary Fisher and at the middle school. We didn't take every available space yet. So I feel comfortable with the space. That's not the issue. For me, it's really the staffing.
Yes, Tom.
Is Danielle trying to say something or no?
I don't know. Danielle?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, yes. I guess what I would just add to the meeting, so from what I understand, we're sending this plan in, and then we wait to hear what the governor is going to announce for all school systems.
So
As reopen.
So as of today, the thought is that everybody's coming to school, right? That's the thought of today. I did hear in the news that he was going to be making some announcement at the beginning of August in relation to the opening of school. I don't know if that's going to change any configurations that we're submitting on Friday or not. We don't know the answer to that. Obviously, the superintendents sometimes are the last to know, but we don't know that yet. But I have heard and I have read in the news that he does plan on making some statement around the reopening of school at the beginning of August. So Danielle, I guess to answer your question, you are sort of right. We are kind of waiting to hear the final word.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Tom.
I guess just to go back to kind of what I was saying before, I guess I'm having a little bit of an issue still on how we're going to pay for all this. And secondly, and Kathleen, I don't know if we can do this, but can we as a board, I know we have to agree on a plan, on the plan getting presented, but is there a way that we as a board can orchestrate a letter to the governor that has our main concerns? And I know, you know, Superintendent Smith is our CEO of the company, but I don't think she should be the one that has to take the burden of this letter. So is it something that we can send from the Board of Education that says, here's a list of, you know, concerns that we have, as we are an alliance district with limited funds and barely getting by as it is?
No, we could do that. I see no reason why we couldn't do that in addition to Melinda's letter. We could get one of those together.
Yeah, you know, I
I don't
just,
think we can do it by Friday, but we certainly could draft a letter.
You know, I mean, I know, and Superintendent Smith, I mean, please, if I'm out of line, please tell me, but I don't feel that you should be the one that takes the brunt of all of this.
But I do plan on putting a cover letter, I'm going to say, with the reentry plan. I feel that it's my duty and responsibility to let you know that I put a plan together that I don't know how I'm going to fund. And I have to put that in writing to the commissioner so he understands that I did what I was asked to do. And I think we collectively did a pretty good job at trying to get all the bases covered. My worry is now, you know, if we have a big group of people that cannot work, we're dead in the water. We won't have enough staff, and there's probably not enough substitutes out there, even if we did have a sack of money. So I'm concerned about that. But I do need to let the commissioner know that the plan we put together is really dependent upon some additional staffing and money. And so I have to put that in writing, but I think it is I mean, the Board of Ed can certainly write to the governor and, you know, support that thought.
All right.
Yeah, and I guess maybe it's not that it's a separate letter, but maybe it's somehow incorporated into your letter that it's also the board's wishes. You know, we're an alliance district, and, you know, with safety and limited funds, how do we make this happen? And again, you know, there's so many double standards right now that go on with mask, no mask, this, that, everything else. And, you know, the travel, we have staff from multiple states. So again, I mean, there's double standards that are being put upon us by our own government. And
Know about that. I mean,
you know, again, there's a lot of what ifs.
You have to wear a mask, period.
No, I get that, but you can also drive here and you're not quarantined. You fly here, but now you're quarantined. So there's so many double standards.
Only if you come from one of the 31 states, but I don't want to get into that
No,
discussion.
I know.
The other thing is we need to contact our representatives, Rick Hayes, May Flexer. I mean, there are voices also. I mean, where are we getting this money from? It's true. I mean, we were all asked, New London, what it was, $2.5 million for New London. Val, you emailed or texted that article? Was it? Yeah. I mean, the average cost to a school district is 1.8 million. Now we fall below that because the average school district had 3,500 kids. We don't have that many kids. So that's what it's costing the average school district in the United States, $1.8 million to comply with the CDC's recommendation.
So, couple thoughts. On this discussion, I mean, we talked about this at one of our previous meetings here in the last 2-3 weeks. You know, I think that the state of Connecticut is going to get shell-shocked on Saturday morning when they open up 169 districts' plans, because forget about whether I think they're incompetent or not. You know, we just put thousands and thousands of eyes onto this problem when you take into account committees all across, you know, the state looking at how to do this. We're not unique. We all have the same problems, which brings us to the point of, if we're all looking for substitutes, if Putnam and Woodstock and Eastford and Killingly and Ellis and everybody's looking for substitutes, I mean, there's going to be a staffing shortage for that reason. If every district in the state was just the same 700,000 we were, that's $118 million. Where's that coming from? The problem is, as we said in one of these previous meetings, we're stuck in a rock and a hard spot. If we don't follow the guidelines, we're liable. If we do follow the guidelines, we don't have the money. So, like I said earlier about, you know, approving this quote draft plan, this whole thing is fluid. Nobody knows. And by the way, nobody putting any of these plans together know if it's going to work or not, because we've never done this before. So, I mean, at the end of the day, we can ask a million questions and walk away with 2 million more questions. I've said it right along. As far as I'm concerned, we do the best we can. We need to educate the kids, and in my opinion, that means they need to be in the classroom. So we can ask a million questions, but we're gonna move forward. We're gonna have to do whatever the governor says at the end of the day. He's gonna pick a day for everybody to magically open, and that's the situation we're in. And so.
But we live in a litigious society, Sean.
Sure we do. Yeah. Oh, Tom, you know, I'm always the one saying, hey, did we check with the attorney? I say it usually once a meeting, you know?
And I mean, I hate that we live in a litigious society, trust me. But at the same point, we, you know, and I know you're about this too, the safety of the children and staff are first and foremost to ensure that they get provide an adequate education on the safety for everybody.
Mhm.
How do we do that?
And I think, you see, the problem, Tom, is the answer is there isn't anybody on earth that knows the answer.
Agreed.
Correct.
So we do the best we can. We hope that the kids listen to what we say, and we give it a shot, and we see what happens. And at the end of the day, then we'll figure out if it worked or not. I mean, that's the answer. And anybody who thinks differently is kidding themselves. We can't wait till a vaccine is. We can't. We'd be closed for who knows how long. Kids would fall so far behind. I mean, at the end of the day, we approve a plan and we go with our best knowledge, whatever that is on a given day. Like you said, double standards all across the board. I can find 3 sides to every discussion that we're having, if not more. So
I think we get back to the what we're approving tonight is just sending the draft with the 3 scenarios. I wanted you all to look at it, see the presentation, and just give our input and say, yes, Melinda, this is a great draft. Let's send this in to the governor. We're not deciding which scenario we're going with. We're not deciding what we approve of. You know, I'm in favor of one scenario, you're in favor of another. We're not deciding that tonight. What we're deciding is if we were to go with any of these scenarios, what we have developed, what Melinda and her group and her committee has developed are good answers to either of the scenarios. And it's in its draft form because it's going to be changed possibly by whatever the governor, the commissioner, anybody in the state gets up on, what side of the bed they get up on that morning and decide. Is that clear?
Yep.
Yes.
I don't disagree with you. The only problem is these guys getting up on the wrong side of the bed. Some of them have no clue with the fact that they're treating the entire school systems of the state all the same. We don't have the money. We know we don't have it, but that doesn't mean that, you know, they don't know. I think if I vote on anything with this draft, my personal thing is I agree with Tom to do a cover letter, particularly for our district is poor already. We're not going to be able to accommodate how we are mandated to accommodate. And my other thing is July 16th, I shared a story from NBC Connecticut, did exactly what Sean just talked about. They say at least 10% of current teachers are not going to come back for one reason or the other. And the substitutes, there are very little to get from. How are you going to get those substitutes certified and get all the credentials you need to have those people in the classroom with the kids? There's a lot of things coming down the pipe. And Melinda, I hope you do a cover letter when this draft goes. And I mean, this is a really well put together thing. And I know people that this didn't come overnight. There was a lot of work put into this. However, we have some scenarios that we need to be concerned about, particularly money. And that's my point.
I could put the letter together and Kathleen could sign it on behalf of the board.
Yes.
Right, and I agree. We don't have the money. There is no way we could comply at $776,000. That is way out of our league, you know, to bring. And you're right, manpower. If we don't have the manpower, we can't just drag anybody off the street.
And I also wonder if our tri-state area is actually talking, because if you saw anything today, particularly from your state, Rhode Island, Linda, that you live in, there's been a new group formed with parents and teachers. They're already up to 10,000 that say, we're not going to have you open our schools come August 31st. So I'm wondering if they're going to be talking about all of that.
Yeah, there's new, the scuttle is that they're only going to bring back the elementary and the secondary. This is what I heard via the grapevine, and the secondary students are going to distant learn, but I haven't heard anything official from the governor. I watched the news tonight. She didn't say anything. Chris, you stay up on that because you're on the reentry team in Smithfield, and I don't know if you have anything that is different than that. No.
Okay,
No, it's the same as you said, Melinda.
okay. All right, then. Let's vote on sending this draft document as the district was asked to do, ordered to do by the State Department of Education to the governor's office. So the Department of Education get there by Friday with a cover letter. I can sign it. I'll have to sign it tomorrow night or Friday morning, first thing tomorrow.
Probably Friday because I'll work on writing it tomorrow.
Okay, great. Friday, because I'm out of town tomorrow.
Good.
Yeah, good.
No, good. It gives me all day to write it.
Okay, I'll be back on Friday. I'll be painting my walls. Ha, we're finished with the plaster. So, all right, the motion is on the floor now to vote on just sending the draft. All right, Donna texted me. All right, okay. Now the motion's on the floor that we're going to send the draft with a cover letter strongly stating that we can't afford this. And we have concerns. Melinda will draft the letter. I will look at the letter and sign the letter for the Board of Ed, and Melinda will sign it as the superintendent of the school, and voicing our concerns of being a small district in the northeast corner with no money. And I'm sure a lot of other districts in our area and in other areas of the state are in the same boat we are.
Mhm.
So there, I will call a head count vote. Donna just texted me that she votes yes because her iPad just died. Jody, how do you vote?
Yes.
Okay. Tom?
Yes, reluctant, but yes,
Yeah, well, you know.
I know.
Danielle?
Yes.
Okay. Sean?
Yes.
Val?
Yes.
Okay. Linda?
Yes.
And Donna voted yes. And I vote yes. So we can send this with the cover letter on Friday. And I strongly suggest that we do get.
Danielle, Donna's being asked to be unmuted.
Oh, you got back on, Donna? Okay, great.
Yes, sorry about that.
Okay, good. Okay, so now the next item on the agenda is we have to approve the amended school calendar for 2021. And then this was amended to include the extra 3 days of professional development that was granted by the governor.
And to reduce the student school year to 180, so I have one additional PD day after school lets out. We needed that last year, we didn't get it, and I think it's critical, and we only have to go, 177 student days.
Right, so the last day of school would be June.
I don't have it in front of me, do you, Dan?
I got it. We have a,
Yes. June 30th.
No.
June
No.
30th.
No,
boy. What it says.
June 30th,
It
No.
says
Oh,
graduation,
no, I'm looking at the last day in
June
June.
9th,
June 9th. Yeah.
June 9th.
Hey,
Yeah,
graduation, August 1st.
June 9th is June 30th, those poor kids.
I know.
Well, what's going to happen is all those schools in the south that open like on August 8th, and we're going to get some news. They're going to have some bad experiences, and then we're going to learn from their bad experiences that we can't open. So
Does this reflect 177 days? Or 180?
181.
Because they just dropped it to 177, didn't they?
yeah, and that's what this is supposed to do. We
That's
were
what I-
going to start on the 26th and the 27th. And the teachers were going back on the 24th, right?
Yes, they are.
Right, but the kids were going to come in on the 27th.
The 31st.
Well, they are now, but they weren't.
Yeah.
They were
They
going to
were
come
coming
back.
in on the, yes.
Right. So,
So again, it's 177 days for the kids.
Exactly.
Okay.
And obviously, this is something that the state has allowed, correct? Because they're the ones basically mandating it.
yeah,
You can only use the PD days up front before school starts. It's not like you can take those 3 days and sprinkle them through the school year. They want you to have that preparation time for distant learning or on-site learning and the extra training that's going to have to happen just in relation to COVID.
Yep.
yeah, we got a memo from the Commissioner of Education, Cardona there. And at this time, Connecticut state law requires that access to public school class be offered to students for 180 days and 900 hours unless the district avails itself of the recent Connecticut State Board of Education waiver for 3 additional planning and training days to hold school for a total of 177 days. So anyway, that was a letter dated July 21st, 2020. So I need
You need a motion, Kathleen. I can make the
I
motion.
need a motion. My text keeps going off. All right, I need a motion to approve the amended school calendar for 2021.
I can make that motion, Kathleen. This is Linda.
Okay. Linda,
Donna, I'll second it.
Donna seconds it. Okay. I will call a vote. And since I can't see everybody, I'm going to have to do a roll call vote. And I'll start with Donna.
Yes.
And I'll go up to Linda,
Yes.
Val,
Yes.
Dawn,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Jody,
Yes.
Danielle. She's muted.
Muted.
Yeah.
Okay, and then me, yes. Chairman votes yes. Okay. So that's been approved. Okay, then I guess the next thing on the agenda is citizens' comments. Please use the chat. I'm gonna leave us all mute. I'm gonna leave you all muted. Please use the chat box. I'll open it up for citizens' comments. Any citizens' comments at this time?
So Kathleen, if nobody's chiming in, I got a quick question that I didn't think of before, so.
Sure.
Melinda, has there been any talk of how they're gonna is the state going to, I don't know how to put it, like, loosen the regulations regarding some special ed IEP stuff if educators are gonna have to be kind of moved around? Has there been any talk about possibly doing that where, if we have to use special ed teachers in regular classrooms or reading in regular classrooms, would they loosen any regulations regarding what we're mandated to provide?
No, so the scenario with that is going to be that either a Title I teacher or a special educator is going to pair with a gen ed cohort, and students of, say we'll use students that have IEPs, they'll be in both sides of the cohort, and the special educator will service those students by providing half-time in one cohort and half-time in the other cohort. But I know from everything I've read, and Chris, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that those regulations have not been relaxed at all.
That would make perfect sense the way our state works. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Jenny Racca, can you unmute her?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm a parent of a special needs child, and I have some questions in regards to some of the things that I heard in the plan. Number one, how many staff will be in each classroom? My child needs a one-to-one. So I'm just curious is there only going to be one staff member in a classroom, or is she still going to be allowed to have that one-to-one with her?
Yeah, your child's individual education plan must state that there's a one-on-one paraprofessional with your child, so your child will still have that paraprofessional.
Okay, good. Another question I had is about the live video feed that is going to be running.
So
what if a parent doesn't want their child on video, and that's going to be streamed to everyone's households?
So we're thinking about just having the video or the camera be on the teacher, and then have that streamed out, and not have that interactivity. So we are looking at that. We want to make sure that everybody's protected. But in a Zoom classroom, there are children that have special education services, and they've been on those Zoom meetings as well. We're certainly going to take that into consideration on how we are able to provide distant learning for our students. Obviously utilizing some of those teachers that can do some tutoring or individualized distant learning, we'll certainly do that. But we are conscious of the fact that we're going to have students, we don't want their, I don't know how to put this sensitively, we want to make sure that their rights are protected as well. So we are looking at having the camera face the teacher and record the teacher when she's giving instruction.
Okay. So if, let's say I, for instance, work in a different school district, and if, let's say, my classroom is quarantined, does that mean that my child who's attending your school would also have to be quarantined? And how does that affect your classrooms?
Yeah, so that's a question for NDDH, and that goes back to those definitions of, contact, and whether or not that scenario, your child would be that removed from the situation, so that it didn't present a health risk. And that type of a scenario, we would call the Department of Health, ask their guidance, and then make a decision.
Okay, thank you.
I have another question here from Melissa. Melissa, could you then type in your last name and address, please? Can you talk more about full capacity buses and how social distancing will be accomplished?
So that's the interesting thing, and what I was primarily surprised at when the plan came out, because in a moderate risk, The buses can run at full capacity or near full capacity. Many of our buses don't run at full capacity. And I was surprised by that because now you have, to really have a pure cohort, you would certainly want students cohorted on buses. That's not practical. We don't have enough buses. We don't have enough drivers. That could never be possible. But I was surprised to see that they were going to allow larger groups of students coming in on the bus. And that's part of the plan in a low risk. We're going to try looking at how many students, that's what I'm asking, how many students are going to use bus transportation initially, because if we can reduce some of the number of students riding on certain buses that are heavy populated, we're going to do that. So if we know, I don't know, 30% of our students aren't going to use the bus, then we'll be able to make those adjustments. I have a meeting set up on August 10th with DADCO folks. That's after the date that families have to submit their transportation needs to us, and hopefully we can make some adjustments so that we can separate kids up, but they won't be social distanced on the bus.
Okay, this one is from Sarah Desjarlais. Will there be any time changes for school reopening? And will there be a capacity limit on buses? I think we've answered that. I have 2 elementary children and I am wondering if they will be on 2 different buses.
No, they'll more than likely be on the same bus depending on the route, but they will be on the same bus. We're trying to keep siblings together. Even when we go to the A-B scenario, I know Principal Perrette has been working with the other principals, making sure that if we went to an A schedule, everybody in that family would be on the A schedule. And that's taking some doing, making sure that we have, you know, siblings together when we have to switch to a hybrid model. Same thing on the buses, that split on buses, unless of course one's going to the middle and high school and one's going on the elementary run. Those are 2 different runs, but if they're both in elementary, they're going to go on the same bus and more than likely sit together on the same seat, in the same seat.
Okay, this one is from Nicholas Rybacki. If a class has to get quarantined and now your child has to be home for 2 weeks, then they finish the quarantine, go back to school, and a week later, another test positive in the same class again, do they have to quarantine again? How can a parent rely on the school system if their kid can be sent home for 2 weeks at any notice?
Yeah, and I'm going to look at Shannon to help me with that one, but that right now is what we're being directed to do. I don't know if that's going to change. Shannon, I don't know if you have any other insight on that.
My insight is that we're in the middle of a pandemic. So, I mean, we have to follow the rules that are set forth by the Department of Health and NDDH. They are still trying to draft a plan to, I guess, streamline how these things will happen, how we need to close classrooms or who's a contact, who's not a contact. I mean, I think they've drilled it down pretty well, but we're still waiting for some guidance from them as to how we're going to proceed. There's no good answer for that.
Yeah.
If somebody is exposed and you need to be home for 10 days, then we're going to need to be home for 10 days. And I think in the grand scheme of things, sniffles and coughs and sore throats are going to be treated a lot differently than they ever were before. People are going to, you know, kids and staff need to monitor themselves at home. If they're ill, and all of these symptoms go along with the COVID symptoms. And you can have strep throat, but be a COVID carrier. So I think that there's going to be a lot less tolerance for being ill in school. And people are going to be sent home if they if they are ill.
Peg Smith.
There's no good answer.
Okay. Peg Smith wants to know, will masks be provided for children and families who cannot afford them? The answer is yes.
Oh, yes, we have a stockpile. I don't know how long it will last, but we do have a stockpile.
Yes, Val.
Questions for Shannon, because I've been kind of curious about this myself. So if it's not a typical medical mask, it's a cloth-made one that somebody has, are there washing requirements on that? Like, how often do those things have to be washed and cleaned?
Shannon needs, yeah.
I'm
There she
sorry.
is.
Yes, they do need to be cleaned.
Will we be able to send something home, Shannon, to families, giving them some guidance on how often those cloth ones be washed?
Yes.
Yeah,
We could
okay.
speak about it during the parent forums. I mean, I wash masks daily.
Yo. Okay, now I have Paula. Oh, forgive me, Paula. Bogoslavsky.
Ooh, good job.
If a student has to stay home due to symptoms, I immediately be able to switch to distance learning while they are at home and then go back to school once symptoms are gone.
We're gonna have to figure that out. We do need to make that accommodation. Obviously, we're quarantining them at home for 14 days. We want them to receive instruction. So the answer is yes. And keeping track of that is going to be, it's going to be on the principals and their team to keep track of that. So we make sure that they're connected to instruction.
All right.
Again, Vala?
Do we have a number of temporal thermometers at the school to test these kids? And if not, do we need to get some?
So thanks to Shannon, we ordered those in April, and every school, I think, what did we get? 7 of them, Shannon? We ordered 7 so that we have ample of those thermometers. And we also have a station, a freestanding station that we're going to try out at the high school. But yes, we have ample thermometers.
Anybody else?
Melinda, I've just gotten a couple texts from people who were busy at the start and didn't know what was going on with the meeting. You said that this is being taped to be what? Posted on the website? Like, how would parents that weren't able to get on access this now?
It can be on the website, and tomorrow I'll send out a letter with letting them know where they can find it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and no more citizens' comments? We're all done? Plus there'll be okay, wait a minute, I have one more. This is from, oh boy, you're really testing me tonight, people.
Brightowski.
Brightowski, do you, Thompson Road, do you believe the hybrid model is the safest way at the moment to reintegrate as far as capacity requirements and cleaning, and at the same time not overwhelming the students with being in full-time school program with masks on continuously for 5 days a week? Could it be possible to start with the hybrid model and then restructure back into full-time when the environment warrants it?
So some districts actually wanted to start their plan with a hybrid model, and received this week communication from the commissioner that that was not our directive. Our directive was that we were going to accept students into school full-time. Do I believe that the hybrid model would be the best way that we could ease children back into school? Yes, but that isn't what we've been asked to do. We've been asked to plan for everybody coming back on August 31st.
Okay, whoops. Ashley Fournier, just a statement for all. With this situation being so hard on families and the possibility of children being home more, please know families can reach out to T at any time to use the food pantry. Thank you, Ashley, for reminding everyone of that.
Yeah.
Okay? And with that, may I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it. This is Linda.
Okay, Sean and Linda, thank you very much. See you guys on the 3rd of August, the policy committee, but any board member is welcome to attend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And
Bye.
Danielle, when you log off, it's going to give you the recording link, so you need to save that. I saved it to my desktop when I did it, just so you know, but
If I hit the stop button, does it record automatically?
it'll stop, yeah,
And then it'll give me a file to save.
when you start to log out.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Night.